Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our final day of our Diversity of Thought Summit and Awards ceremony. My name is Jim Downham, and I am the CEO of PAC Packaging Consortium. If you joined us yesterday or the day before, welcome back. It's been 2 great days, and our central theme for our speakers has been diversity of thought. There has been inspirational but tough conversation on past behavior, shared solutions, and an action plan to push forward and thrive beyond 2021. We are committed to doing more than just talking about it. Today, PAC is issuing a call to action to our community to come together and collaborate, innovate, educate, and develop a plan to create a more just world. A world that uplifts the voices of everyone and atones for past mistakes. This is the last day of our summit, and after we hear from yet another all-star panel, we will make our final awards presentations to our winners of the 2021 PAC Global Leadership Awards, including today the 2 Best of Show Awards. We are excited, folks. And now on to day 3. It is my honor to open our final day of this important summit with this dynamic speaker panel. Single-use plastic has been top of mind for many of us with food service front and center. As we have heard from Tom Saki at several of our summits, Tom doesn't believe in waste. In fact, he is the global leader of finding solutions for the most challenging packages and products. On this occasion, global brand leaders Burger King and Tim Hortons have partnered with Loop, the zero-waste platform, to launch their reusable, returnable cup and food packaging initiative. This is a game-changing solution, and the QSR community and many others are watching this initiative very closely. And here to discuss further, we welcome Matthew Banton, Global Head of Innovation and Sustainability for Burger King. Joining Matt is Paul Yang, Director of Innovation and Sustainability at Tim Hortons, and Tom Saki, Founder and CEO of TerraCycle and Loop. Gentlemen, over to you.
It is absolutely such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Jim, for the kind introduction, and thank you both Paul and Matt for attending. Over to you, gentlemen.
Likewise, thanks, Jim, and I'm glad to be here as well. Looking forward to this exciting session with everyone here today.
Awesome, guys. Hey, everyone. Nice to be here. So looking forward to it.
Cool. So, and I think I'll go ahead and get it started. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I think it's important to understand as we start here today, as both Paul, myself, and Tom get started, just to understand and kind of put some context behind a lot of the work that we're going to talk about today as well. We know that reusables is a very important topic in this space, but I think as it's the first time we're all actually talking together about our initiative, I think it's very important for you guys to understand kind of also how we thought about the project, where it came from, and kind of what our point of view on the topic is. So I'll spend some time just giving you some background on ourselves here at Restaurant Brands International, and our 3 brands, and kind of how we got to the journey here with the team at Loop. So you go to the next slide, please. So first and foremost, as part of Restaurant Brands International, we're 3 iconic brands in Burger King, Tim Hortons, and Popeyes. We have a long and storied history. Here you can see our brands have been around since 1954, 64, and 72, respectively, with a global presence in restaurants all around the world, right? And I think, you see Paul and myself here today representing some initiatives we talked about, but, we don't see anyone from Popeyes. It's not because, they aren't there. I think the team there has an amazing amount of initiatives also in play, but, we thought the technical difficulties of having 4 talking heads would probably be too great for today. So you're with Paul and myself today to go over some of the work that, both Burger King and Tim Hortons are doing together with Loop. And if you go to the next slide, one of the most important things is to understand is kind of like we as a company, like what are we trying to do and what is our goal and what is our kind of our vision? And I think it's the idea is that we're trying to build the most loved restaurant brands in the world, right? And you're going to see that our brands kind of take that forward position, and brands is the key element there as well. It's how do we use our brands in a way to enlighten, to bring joy, and to kind of enrich the lives of our guests around the entire world as well. And a key thing in that process is going to be the values and visions that we have along the way to kind of get there. And I think as we discussed about this sustainability topic today, there is a key value that I think that kind of represents the work or the mindset that we kind of put in place today as well. So if we go to the next slide. And one of our key values that we have here is that life is too short for small dreams, right? And I think the idea and premise behind this is very important when we think about sustainability, because the path towards a sustainable future or to future-proof our brands has a lot of unknowns, has a lot of things that and directions that we don't know what will be important today, tomorrow. There's short-term and long-term essential priorities. But if we're able to anchor ourselves towards a big dream or big vision, everything generally will work itself out along the way, because essentially it takes the same amount of energy and thought to think about a small idea than a big idea. I think the difference is just going to be in the execution, right? And when we think about sustainability, that big idea that we have and the kind of the root or North Star is our Restaurant Brands for Good plan. So if you go to the next slide, please. Just to explain to you what Restaurant Brands for Good, and essentially, it is the anchor in our sustainability vision for everything that we do here at Restaurant Brands International and among with our brands as well. And I think the idea here, and I think it's the vision we have, is that the food and we serve our guests around the world each day, we believe that it can be delicious, affordable, convenient, but there's no reason that it cannot be sustainable as well. And that's the lens that we look at everything through, and we challenge ourselves to deliver against that with every priority and every project and everything that we do as well. And then if you go to the next slide, just to highlight kind of how we kind of set up our Restaurant Brands for Good framework, it's actually relatively simple, right? Where we have the food that we serve our guests each day is kind of why they come to us. We want to make sure that we're serving high quality food and guests feel good about the things that they are eating here as well. So you're going to see things here that we touch on: food safety, nutrition, transparency, also the fact that our ingredients are real as well. And we have initiatives happening all around the world on things like this, whether it's to clean up our menus or whether it's to also, like I said, further provide transparency and towards our guests. Then we kind of work on the planet, where we essentially want to reduce our footprint as much as possible and overall minimize our impact, right? And, packaging and recycling, the thing we'll talk about today, is a key initiative there. But we're also working on green buildings, having to make sure that we're also addressing sourcing and other things as well, bringing it all together holistically to minimize our overall impact on the planet as well. And finally, it's our pillars, our peoples and communities, where we want to essentially support communities and enhance the livelihood of our guests, our suppliers, through things like community involvement, D&I, ethics, and supplier community livelihood. So all of this wraps up into that mindset and big dream that we have to essentially make everything we do more sustainable, reduce our impact overall, and do it in a big way. And I think there's no bigger way to do it than kind of this partnership that we're discussing here with Loop today. But I want to hand it over to Paul to kind of walk you through kind of some of now that you understand kind of the framework of how we got here with our Restaurant Brands for Good, kind of what are some of the context and mindset that kind of led us towards the opportunity with Loop. So Paul?
Thanks so much, Matt. So next slide, please. So we're going to take you guys on a bit of a virtual field trip today. And I want to take you back to 1954. The picture that you can see here on the screen, this is the first ever BK restaurant. And I think it's safe to say that society has evolved a lot over the time period, right? When we think of our lives today, we think of the emergence of technology. That's really something that we can point to that's been a fundamental culture change for us, and as well a change in behaviors. We think of today, we operate faster than ever, we're endlessly connected, and we've got knowledge in our fingertips. Next slide, please. So as we fast forward to today, this is a picture of the exterior facade of our latest Burger King restaurant design image. Here you can see very different, right? And so we've got optimized drive-through lanes. We have predictive technology that can enable us to provide really tailored experiences for guests, catering to their needs, flavor profiles, palettes, and all things that we can customize sort of on the fly. We also have integrated loyalty programs and remote and contactless payment, all things that are driving significant enhancements and advancements in the overall guest experience. Next slide, please. And then let's look at Tim's. So it's 1964. This is a picture of Restaurant 1 in Hamilton, Ontario. What a humble beginning that we had. Next slide, please. And when we fast forward, you can see here, this is the interior of our Innovation Cafe, 130 King, just below our Toronto office. And not only have we spent time looking at the outside or the exterior details of our restaurants, but it's also, I think everyone knows the saying, it's what's on the inside that counts. And in this restaurant, here we pilot new products, right? Things that literally make your mouth water just thinking about them. We've got technology integrated. So you think of things like mobile ordering, mobile kiosks. We have wireless charging built into tables and surfaces so guests can stay a while. We've got incorporated sustainability elements in the building design, operations, and also through the latest and greatest in packaging advancements, right? And we're going to touch on that in a second. Next slide, please. So here, we've got to ask ourselves, what is really the role of packaging? And traditionally, packaging has been designed to protect and preserve a product. Next slide, please. And so when we think about that, let's just take one example. So the paper bag. The majority of our guests probably don't walk into a BK and say, I want to buy a paper bag today. But we think about what that bag actually does. So the bag really serves as a delivery system that protects, say, a Whopper and a fries, and it preserves it until a guest is ready to enjoy their meal. But over the years, what's been done here is we've evolved packaging, and there are a couple other dimensions that we need to look into and that we've added into the mix. Next slide, please. Really, the first sort of additional dimension is really about integrating circular design thinking. So we really believe that the first kind of design is really the first signal of intention behind what we're doing. And then point two is really that packaging has now become a functional part of the guest experience. And here you can see a bunch of items that we've launched over the past years. So we've got our new coffee lid, we have our new strawless lid for cold beverages. We've got our new sandwich wraps that have improved heat retention, but also eliminate multi-layer laminates using kind of material science and chemistry. But let's pick an example here. So the coffee cup lid. Probably when you look at this lid, most people are thinking, yeah, it's a nice design. It fits with the Tim's brand. And they're right. But let me take you a little bit behind the scenes to explain a little bit more through this design and the thought process behind it. So you think of something like the tab. So the tab was designed for our guests that we know are on the run, right? To help reduce splashing and spilling. You think of the sip hole size. So the sip hole size was optimized for flow rate that we know that our guests love, right? The right amount of flow as they consume their beverage. You'll notice that the sip hole is slightly recessed from the top surface of the lid. We did this very intentionally. It's to make sure that the top of your lip doesn't catch the opening as you roll the lid off of your mouth. The height of the lid, right? So perfectly matched to allow the right mouthfeel and spot for your lips to rest while drinking. The leaf, we might think that this is iconic to the brand, but it's also a space to ensure that your nose has somewhere to go when you're drinking. And even the size of the circular platform on the top of the lid, really designed so you can stack one cup on top of another on the go. So you think with all of that, you're probably saying sort of like, wow, all I did really was order a coffee. But when we look at it, that's really the point, right? So the point is that what we're doing here with design is we're thinking ahead of our guests, building in the things that we know that are going to provide a more seamless experience to them. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, if you go to the next slide, I think Paul just did a really good job of kind of almost a science class of kind of the work that kind of goes behind the packaging development we do here. So packaging has evolved over time, right? But we know that, just a simple evolution in things that we do today is not enough. And a lot of that has to do with the changing landscape and mindset of the guests, right? Our guests are kind of demanding new things and things are changing. And on the next slide, you'll see some of the things that we think about and have to kind of battle each and every day, right? So we know that waste is a top issue globally for our guests. It's tied with climate change and air pollution. So it's very top of mind as well. And then our guests also care about sustainability because it's starting to affect their purchase decisions each and every day for the products they buy, the things they consume, whether at a restaurant, in a grocery store, everything else. It's becoming a much more top of mind issue, right? So we have to make sure that we have the elements in place to make sure that it's not a barrier for guests visiting our stores around the world each day. And also with the change in mindset for guests, we know that our landscape is changing because of legislation, right? Because you're going to see material bans, product laws are coming in around the world for different things like single-use plastics, the way how the materials have to be sourced from, the amount of recyclable content, etc. So not only are guests demanding it, but we're also facing legislative pressures around the world to ensure that our packaging meets certain requirements. And I think, when we look at kind of the fact that as we're part of the problem, we have to be part of the solution, our guests kind of feel the same way as well, right? Because guests are kind of relying on the brands to kind of propose the solution. Obviously, they feel that they're responsible to some extent, so they're going to do their part by whether it's putting packaging in the right recycling bin, picking the right materials, picking everything else. But almost 46% feel that the brands have to also have some responsibility there as well. So we really need to kind of address sustainability as an issue to make sure that we are future proofing ourselves and having no barriers to visitation for our guests over time. And if you go to the next slide, we kind of highlight how we think about this, right? So I think there's three main ways you'll see us think about packaging overall. And the first one is reduction, right? We need to eliminate packaging in our system where possible and reduce it to levels of only what's essentially required. And for the things that we do keep in our system, we're essentially going to shift them to materials that are better for the environment, and then work to reuse and recycle those through infrastructure changes as well. The other thing we look at for packaging is innovation, right? I think, Paul touched on some of the work that we did around the lid there, but I think it's also how do we innovate throughout the supply and value chain to not only provide new functional benefits to our guests, but also things that are tied to sustainability initiatives as well, because I think those are really big challenges that require a lot of thought and also new ways to do things to kind of get there as well, and which will require us to partner, collaborate, test, and to take leadership opportunities, right? I think there's if we're going to make some of these big changes, we have to be a leader in this space, and that's some of the things we'll talk about today as well. And the final piece is this idea on the furthest right is kind of closing the loop, right? So how do we repurpose our resources that have kind of been put through the system to ensure that we're not generating any incremental packaging or the single-use items to serve our guests each and every day. Now, I think each of these things are things that we have initiatives and projects that are working in parallel, but we wanted to start to understand the landscape of, okay, where are we today? Where do we want to get? And what is something in the future that we feel is going to be there, but we aren't quite sure right now exactly how to get there. And I think one of the biggest topics that came up at the time was reusables, right? Because we know that reusables are important because one, if you're able to reuse a package multiple times, you reduce your impact. So it touches our first pillar right there as well. So we have to produce overall less packaging. We know that it requires some form of innovation because especially in the fast food hamburger space and the QSR space where Burger King operates today, reusables is not a natural thing, right? So we know it's going to require us to rethink about the current mousetrap, rebuild it, understand what's important to guests, what do we have to put there, how do we remove friction from our processes to make this work, and also how do we get guests to adopt, right? At the end of the day here, we're starting to change guest behavior potentially with reusables. So what do we have to change along our process and journey to get there? And finally, it's just the last piece, which is almost like the most obvious, is like closing the loop there, right? But less about closing the loop, but how do we essentially build a system that's going to allow us to give an asset to a guest, return the asset to be clean. What is that process to bring it back to the restaurant, and all the operations and logistics that happen across that path as well. So that was kind of, when we thought about the reuse opportunity, it was like all these things crossed our mind as well. And if you go to the next slide, At that time, is kind of when we started to reach and have conversations with the Loot team on a potential partnership, because we value kind of their expertise and kind of the work that they were doing in the space, and also thought that we had a very similar mindset that, hey, we are working towards a future of potential reusables. We don't know how we're going to get there, but we have to collaborate and let's work together to kind of, potentially build a future where reusables are the solution for our guests to overall minimize the packaging that we have in our system as well. So we're going to talk about more of the journey of this first, but I think it'd be really good for Tom just again to give a quick update to everyone and kind of quickly what Loop is, if you aren't aware, how the kind of system works, and then we'll talk about some more about how the challenges and how some of the things that we have to do on our side to kind of bring both our companies together on this amazing pilot that we're on today as well. So Tom, I hand it over to you.
Matt, thank you so much, and thank you, Paul, as well for the background. It's a real privilege to be here, and especially incredibly excited about partnering with both Tim Hortons and Burger King all around the world. So if we go to the next slide, I want to tell a little bit about how Loop works for anyone who may not be aware and what we're really trying to achieve through Loop. Now, just for background, Loop is the third division of TerraCycle, which has been around now for just under 20 years, operating in 20 countries around the world, from Canada to Japan and many in between. And TerraCycle is a mission-driven waste management company whose goal is to eliminate the idea of waste. And we do that by moving from linear systems to circular ones. And so our first division focuses on how do we collect and recycle hard-to-recycle package forms, even things like sauce packages at restaurants like Burger King. Then from there, moving into how do we help incorporate recycled content back into packaging, like ocean plastic into shampoo bottles. And what's interesting in those first two divisions is it's all about moving from a linear system into a circular one based on recycling. How do we collect and recycle as much as possible and integrate recycled content? And that, I think, would echo the major focus today in the consumer products and industry, or industry that has a disposable packaging or content, is how do we help collect and recycle and make those things from recycled materials? Now, a few years ago, really back in 2017, we started thinking, is that enough? Can we go deeper in the ability to solve for waste? And we landed on, well, maybe we need to challenge the idea of single use. Because single use really emerged in the 1950s, and that is a major reason why we have a large volume of waste today. And as we thought about this idea of single use and how do we shift to reuse, the first thing we did is evaluate systems that are already out there. For example, in Canada, the beer system is a fantastic, functioning, scaled reuse ecosystem, well, just like our propane tanks. But one of the challenges we noticed is that, well, you can't take your propane tank to the beer place, and you can't take your beer to the propane tank place. And then what happens as that concept scales? How do we maintain and compete in reusables with the unbelievable affordability and convenience of single use? And that's how Loop came to be. Loop's goal is to be a platform for reuse, where we work with wonderful manufacturers who create products like sandwich containers and coffee cups, as you've seen examples here with Burger King and Tim Hortons, in the reusable ecosystem, and then work with retailers, which could be the same organization, or third-party retailers, who then sell those and make them available to consumers. Now, I'm very excited to say, as we go to the next slide, Loop actually just celebrated another milestone. This Monday, we launched in Canada with Loblaw, bringing fast-moving consumer goods. Everything from Haagen-Dazs ice cream to Heinz tomato ketchup to the Canadian market through a fantastic partnership with Loblaw. This is beginning as an e-commerce platform, and then you'll see it evolve from there. And as you go to the next slide, if you are in the Canadian market, this is how you can experience it, through Loblaw's page. And then you would, from there, go to loopstore.ca so that you can see how it works. And this is the first entry into a marketplace, which we've already now done successfully in the UK, France, and the US. And as we're able to learn on how people interact with reuse, we can really hone the system to make it first as convenient as possible, then as feature-packed as possible, and then thirdly, as affordable as absolutely possible. Now, I wanted to, the next slide, we're going to play a little video to give you a little taste of how Loop comes to life in the flesh. And this is a news clip from France, which was the first market ever in the world to launch Loop.
C'est la journée du climat aujourd'hui et tout peut contribuer à réduire nos émissions. La loi anti-gaspillage concerne aussi la grande distribution. La France s'est fixée pour objectif une sortie complète des emballages plastiques à usage unique en 2040, vous le savez. Focus sur une initiative conjointe de Carrefour et Loop un système de consigne. Reportage Hélène Cornet, Olivier Mélan.
Le Nutella, le Nesquik, le jus d'orange Tropicana ou encore la Ricoré, une trentaine de produits de grandes marques est désormais proposée version emballage durable. Ils sont plus chers à l'achat de 1 à 4 euros, mais une fois consommés, le client peut rapporter ses emballages vides en magasin et se faire rembourser la consigne. C'est la société Loop qui en assure la collecte, le tri et le nettoyage et les renvois aux marques pour être utilisés à nouveau. Favoriser le réemploi, c'est la meilleure solution pour parvenir aux objectifs zéro déchet, selon Barbara Pompili, ministre de la Transition écologique.
La consigne, pour moi, ça va dans le sens de l'histoire. On revient finalement au bon sens. On arrête de gaspiller, on arrête de jeter, on arrête d'être dans cette société du tout jetable.
Un pari pour Carrefour, premier distributeur à proposer ce type de solution. En test dans 2 magasins de proximité parisiens, une dizaine prévus d'ici la fin de l'année. Bertrand Swiderski est le directeur RSE de Carrefour. Pour lui, les consommateurs vont prendre rapidement le pli.
Le consommateur, lui, va comprendre. Il va comprendre ce système. J'achète uniquement le contenu. Le contenant, je ne fais que le louer en fait. Et dès que je vais revenir, il me sera remboursé, etc. Cette mécanique-là, elle va rentrer dans l'esprit de chacun.
Fantastic. So that gives you a little taste of how it comes to life in France. And this is the exact same experience as we go to the next slide that you should expect as we roll out in other markets. Now, what's most important is Loop cannot be done on its own. We are simply a platform, if you will, the glue that brings many wonderful leading organizations together, just like the RBI Group and examples with Burger King and Tim Hortons. Loop first deployed at just almost 2 years ago. It's been 2 years and maybe just a few days at the World Economic Forum in Davos. And today, as a platform, and really as a true multi-stakeholder collaboration, over 100 of the world's biggest consumer product companies have joined, even Nestle and P&G becoming investors in Loop. But it's also for startups, even pre-revenue or smaller organizations have come in. 15 world-leading retailers have joined as well, everyone from Tesco and Carrefour to Burger King and Tim Hortons. And this is so important because we cannot fundamentally bring out a reuse ecosystem that can compete in convenience and affordability with single use without having major organizations at a global scale lean in. And leaning in takes bravery. It's about exploring an unknown system. It's about creating new cleaning protocols. It's about investing capital before the system scales. And this is why we are, I think, really blessed, honestly, to see everyone, all these organizations simultaneously leaning in like this and doing it in a way where we can bring out a system at scale. And so far, we've seen some incredibly good results. Now, speaking of those, as we go to the next slide, to give you a sense geographically, the countries in blue are the countries that are now live in Loop or launching later this year. First was France, then the US, then the UK, and then just this Monday, Canada. And you will see launches in Japan in March, then on Australia and Germany at the end of this year. And you can see some of the examples on this map of when different retailers are launching either online or in store. And the important part here you'll notice coming up is this concept of convenience, the idea that you can buy anywhere and return anywhere. So imagine that you go in, when we're live with Burger King in the United States, into your local or participating Burger King and buy your Impossible Whopper and favorite beverage, and then you can drop that packaging off not just at that Burger King, but maybe at a Kroger. And then you can buy Kroger and drop off at Walgreens, and then buy at Walgreens and drop off at Burger King. And this is so important because think about it: your recycling bin today doesn't care about where you bought your beverage container. It just cares that what you put in the bin is recyclable, but where you bought it is not material. Unfortunately, today in reuse, it is material where you bought your product. And so this is one of the key things that we're trying to challenge in Loop. Now, there's nothing actually new here. As we go to the next slide, the idea of reuse was with us until about the 1950s. We used to cobble our shoes. We mended our clothing. We used to buy milk from the milkman. Our motor oil, our perfume came in reusable packaging. And what was really interesting in that time, especially in the day of the milkman, was that the package acted financially as an asset to the manufacturer, which meant that the manufacturer was motivated to make that package long-lasting and durable. And it's why we can still buy these containers 100 years later in flea markets today, and they still look beautiful. Then what happened? So we go to the next slide. The 1950s came along, and disposability came onto the scene. And by the way, this photo is not an ironic negative photo from today. It is a positive photo from 1950s. Now, we can look at this somewhat horrified, But I think it's much more important to empathize with why the actors in this photo are authentically smiling. And they're smiling because disposability brought about unbelievable affordability and convenience, and elevated people, elevated our standard of living, gave us more time, really did so many incredibly important things. But a strange thing happened was that the packages became property of the consumer. And is there a coffee cup you want to own when there's no coffee in it? Is there a laundry detergent bottle you want to own when there's no detergent left in it? So why should we own the packaging? And this then became the central question as we go to the next slide. How do we solve the unintended consequences of disposability, which is the waste crisis, and then even the idea of a constantly diminishing budget in packaging, which tends to make packaging potentially less functional or less recyclable? But how do we do that? And this is critical to scale by maintaining the virtues of disposability, which is affordability and convenience. Because if the platform is inconvenient and unaffordable, we're only speaking to 1% of people. And we are today living through an environmental crisis, whether it's climate change or the fact that you think, that we're in a mass extinction at the moment, or the waste problem. There's so many challenges. We have to act urgently, but we also have to act at massive scale, which means major behavior change is probably off the table. We have to think about meeting people where they are and doing that with choices and offers that allow people to act more sustainable without changing their fundamental beliefs. And I think this is what's really exciting about the leading partnership here with the RBI group is it's not just about reuse. Look at what Burger King has done in shifting and giving options for plant-based protein options, or reducing methane in hamburgers. These are critically important, not just to do as little gimmicks, but absolutely at massive scale. So as we go to the next slide, one of the key things that unlock this solution, and by the way, I just want to highlight that these are just theoretical numbers, not the actual numbers on these packages, is to shift packaging from being a cost to an asset. The apples to apples comparison is in a disposable ecosystem. Whatever the price of that package is, or coffee cup or hamburger wrap, is in the price of that content at 100%, and the consumer owns it, which has a challenge because we don't really want to own it in the end. So actually giving up ownership is not a major issue. But on the right-hand side, you see a reusable pack. Now, it's more expensive to make that. That example with Unilever, it's made from beautiful alloys, more functional, more beautiful. But what goes into the price of the content is simply the depreciation of the package, which is the total cost over the number of uses it can attain, plus the cost of refreshing it, which is collecting, sorting, and cleaning. That's the apples to apples comparison. And it doesn't matter if the package is lost because it's securitized by a deposit. And we've actually seen phenomenally high return rates in all these systems. Now, since we're celebrating Canada's launch, I want to show you some examples first in the fast-moving consumer goods sector to see what reusable package can look like. Whether it's highly innovative options, as on the next slide, with Häagen-Dazs, which is now live in Canada in reusable stainless steel. Or if we go to the next slide with our partners at Kraft Heinz, you can see here ethical bean coffee, now and again reusable alloy. Or as we go to the next slide with Hershey, this is engineered plastic. So, Loop is not anti-plastic at all. It's simply looking at single use versus reusable, and plastic has a major role in that. Whether as we go to the next slide, cran raisin, all the way as we go to the next slide, looking at iconic package forms, going back to the original tomato ketchup bottle, but now with a reuse option on it. Whether as we go to the next slide, you can see here Nature's Path with granola, again in engineered plastic. And as I mentioned, even for smaller organizations, as we go to the next slide, you can see here with beautiful glass in reusable soap, or as the next slide, even that original milk bottle coming back. Now, I mentioned Loblaw earlier, and one of the inspiring aspects in Loblaw joining Loop is they, as we go to the next slide, have also really focused on private label products. Here, for example, now lemonade in fully reusable packaging, and many other famous President's Choice products. But we have to be democratic. So as we go to the next slide, you can even see here a startup organization, Meow Meow Tweet, in now reusable personal care. Now, as we go to the next slide, what's important here is that this is a platform. It's a platform for packages and products to become reusable. In that mode, our job is to approve that the package is in fact reusable, which we'll speak about in a moment, and that it's good for the environment. And I see the questions already on LCA, which we're going to have a very detailed explanation on LCA later in this discussion. But we informally help support companies to achieve these innovations. And then it's critically important to actually make sure these are distributed at scale so that we can achieve economic efficiency. As we go to the next slide, what is so key, again, as I mentioned before, but I really want to reinforce, is Loop cannot do this on its own. Without great partners like Tim Hortons and Burger King and Loblaw and many other wonderful organizations, this would be nothing. At most, it would be an academic paper. It is truly dependent on being a multi-stakeholder coalition. And as we go to the next slide, one of the reasons that we have partnered with the World Economic Forum, who've set up Loop as a project and helped us bring it to life to the world 2 years ago, is that through the auspices of the World Economic Forum, we have been able to bring together what we call the Loop Alliance, which is a group of the brands and manufacturers that are part of Loop, the retailers, the ecosystem partners like Ecolab, FedEx, UPS, DHL, as well as, very importantly, leading NGOs and cities, from Greenpeace to the World Wildlife Fund, from the city of New York to the city of Paris. And it was this group, as we go to the next slide, who established the rules for what is reusability. And this is the rules that Loop then mandates for its partners. What we aligned on is that we have to have three things occur. The packages must be reusable, which we focus on as durability. And that was set by this alliance as 10 reasonable uses or more. Now, of course, the more durable, the more affordable it becomes, because a $1 package that can only go around 10 times is 10 cents of depreciation per cycle, while a $5 package that can go around 100 times is 5 cents of depreciation per cycle. Second, it must be cleanable at the very highest standards. And we're very thrilled to now have a global partnership in place with the world's leading industrial cleaning company, Ecolab, which I'll speak about a bit more later. And finally, and critically, this must be better for the environment. One key rule we established is that whenever a package is not able to be reused anymore, because nothing lasts forever, it must be recyclable back into itself. But of course, the easier it is to do that, or the easier it is to clean, or the more durable an object, the cheaper it becomes and the more democratic it becomes for consumers, which is absolutely critical. Now, as we go to the next slide, I want to give you a little more depth on this. What are some of the rules at the moment? So the main aspect of a package, let's say if it's a bottle, the bottle itself, or if it's a coffee cup, the cup part itself must be, no question, reusable. And that is set at 10 reasonable uses or more. And if it isn't, it is not allowed in the platform. There has to be a standard there. And we're now working with many countries and their reuse legislations to help inform reuse legislation from countries like Australia to France to Japan on these rules. Now, there are secondary aspects of packaging, things like tamper seals, complex closures, and there the rule was if it's not possible today to make that reusable, because, for example, there is not a reusable sprayer available on the market yet today, it must be have the option to be collected and recycled in the ecosystem. So if you put in a spray bottle, the bottle must be reusable and the spray top must then be able to be recycled. And the partners must endeavor to be developing a reusable alternative. So for example, Aptar actually made a sizable investment in Loop and is now developing the world's first reusable sprayer. And then there's secondary aspects like the artwork and so on. And again, similar rules there. Now, there's an interesting next step as we go to the next slide. Well, what about the content? And how do we deal with content? Because in some cases, content can feel very much like a package, and in some cases, content's fully consumable. So the rules here is that if the content is not reasonable to recover, everything from, let's say your Tim Hortons coffee, to your Burger King hamburger, all the way to window cleaner, then there is no point of view. Loop will work with absolutely anyone as long as they are looking to endeavor and move to reusable packaging. And there's no point of view simply because the content cannot be recovered. Now, if the content is reasonable to recover, but unreasonable to reuse, let's say a razor blade or a diaper, then it must have a recycling option on it so that you can, put the, say, used diapers back into the ecosystem and they will be recycled, as is the case, for example, in France with Pampers right now. And then if the content is not reasonable to recover and reasonable to reuse, then it needs to move to reusable as fast as absolutely possible. And what's been phenomenal about these, quite bold rules is that over 100 major consumer product companies, as well as retailers, have embraced them and are really investing major resources to bring this out and to do so in a way that is exciting and convenient to consumers. Now, Loop is launched in many countries around the world as an e-com testing platform, as it just did on Monday in Canada. But as we go to the next slide, here's what happens. retailers start going in store. This is Carrefour, leading retailer in France, in store now with Loop. And what's exciting here is you can buy, your products off the shelf. We can go to the next slide to show you another example. There's a ambient section, a chilled section, a frozen section. You'll even see retailers have a clothing section, and you can buy everything from your Nutella in reusable glass to your Nesquik in reusable stainless steel. But then also with brilliant partnerships like what we're speaking about today in the QSR space with restaurants like Burger King, you can buy anywhere and return anywhere. Everyone is participating in the ecosystem. And we're seeing that even though this is a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of consuming, according to Carrefour, this is actually growing the business. It's working economically. It's growing share and growing value. And you're going to see similar deployments as we go to the next slide, whether in Japan with Aeon, the leading retailer there, in March, whether as we go to the next slide with Kroger and Walgreens in the US, whether we go to the next slide and with Tesco in the UK. And it's about an ecosystem. No partner can do this on their own. Loop absolutely could not, but I don't even believe any individual partner can. We have to bring everyone together to create an ecosystem that for reuse that is as simple and convenient as the ecosystem we today enjoy in many countries for recycling. And I'll be back a little bit later to chat a little bit more about the detailed LCA. But before that, I'm going to pass it back to Paul and Matt to talk a bit more about how we're bringing this to life in Burger King and Tim Hortons.
That's so awesome, Tom. Thanks so much for sharing all of that. And it's great to hear and see all of the progress that the Loop team has been making all around the world. So we flip to the next slide, please. When we think about Tim's, we think, reusables isn't really new for us. In 1978, we introduced what we called the Tim mug at the time. And what we learned there and over the course of time as we've sort of evolved and expanded this program are really three key criteria and requirements. So the first being that, this program requires a guest to remember to bring their cup. The second, that before and after drinking, the guest needs to carry this cup around with them. And third, once a guest returns home or if they go to their office, they need to wash the cup and then repeat the cycle. So while we know today that many guests know and love this program and use it daily, we also believe that there are further opportunities to open up additional sort of complementary offering and choices to our guests. Next slide, please. So why do we think that we've got this big opportunity with Loop? Really, it's four main components. So the first one being that we have the ability to provide a very similar experience for guests that they know and love today. A single-use type experience, as Tom mentioned, with all of the sustainability benefits of reusables. The second is that we can collaborate across industry sectors to increase access. So Tom mentioned this one as well, but really bridging QSR, bridging CPG, what it means is that we can increase the drop points and thus increasing the convenience. You'll be able to basically drop off your reusables at many more locations, not just at a Tim's and a BK. This is the next one here, point 3, is the one that we love, right? So we're designers, so we love to talk about design, and we already talked a little bit about how we build in design principles into packaging. But with reusables, we've got such a unique new opportunity here to enhance our guest experience that's so core to our values. And we aren't bound by the traditional cost models of building price into packaging for single use. And we can really look to see how we can premiumize potentially and how we can expand the guest experience that they experience today. And the last point here is that if we do all of this right, we believe that we can create real sort of tangible, meaningful impact that's actually going to move the needle. Next slide, please. And so we like to dream big, as Matt mentioned, and really for us, the dream is simple. The dream is to transform the way food and beverage is consumed around the world. And I'm just going to pause there for 1 second and just say that one more time. Our dream is to transform the way food and beverage is consumed around the world. When we think about that, that's massive. We really want to apply our size, our scale, our network, and our brand power to help move the needle and leave this world in a better place than we found it. So what does this look like in 2021 for us? We need to transform guest insight into product design. And to do this, we're running 4 pilots in 4 cities. This is going to give us the opportunity to test all the various moving parts. So guest interaction, operations, the back of house, and the back end logistics, as well as learn how we optimize and evolve these so that we can open this up and scale it to more restaurants and more cities longer term. Next slide, please. And so you might be thinking, what does this look like for me as a guest? How does it work? What do I do when I walk into a restaurant? And so the process is super simple. Walk into a restaurant and make your order just as you do today. So for instance, walk into a Tim's, I want a double in a loop cup. At that point, our team members are going to ring it in for you, and they're going to add a refundable deposit to your order. The team members are going to prepare your beverage in the reusable cup and hand it to you just like the experience that you know today. And then once that's complete, and once you're finished drinking and consuming your beverage, you're going to drop that cup into a designated drop bin, whether that's at a Tim's or at a BK restaurant or at a different drop point. And your deposit will be credited back to you at that point in time. It's really as simple as that. And on the back end, Loop really helps us collect, clean, and bring fresh products, fresh sanitized products back to our restaurants. So Tom's going to talk a little bit about the back end process. Tom, over to you.
Okay, sorry about being on mute there for a minute, but let's talk a little bit about behind the scenes, both operations and the environmental impact. And I just want to give a quick shout out to anyone who's watching us on YouTube. We can see here the chat window, so please, as you have questions, which we'll go into shortly, feel free to write your questions into the chat window, and we'll do our very best in getting to them. But first and most importantly, I mentioned a lot earlier in the discussion this idea of a multi-stakeholder collaboration. And sort of the visible part of the iceberg, and the really exciting, sexy part is the what you see on package innovation and then also on distribution. You know, that's the beautiful reusable containers that you've seen from Burger King and Tim Hortons, and the distribution, the availability to consumers and how that comes to life. But what about everything else? And Loop is equally a multi-stakeholder collaboration behind the scenes. As we go to the next slide, you know, instead of Loop as a young organization, really focused to become the waste management system of reuse, instead of developing the incredible knowledge and expertise that's needed in cleaning, we have partnered with the world's largest industrial cleaning organization, Ecolab, on a global basis to bring the state-of-the-art cleaning protocols, systems, chemistry, technology, and know-how to Loop. Now, what this means practically is that once the consumer drops off that reusable Tim Hortons coffee cup or sandwich container, either into a bin, a Loop bin at Tim Hortons, or let's say a Loop bin at any participating retailer, Loop then services that bin. We take that to a distribution center locally, and this is the exciting part. In that distribution center, Ecolab has built and operated the most advanced reusable cleaning technology in the planet today. This is the furthest away from our dishwashers at home. Imagine you walk into a completely clean room environment with state-of-the-art equipment, state-of-the-art chemistry, and the ability to, you know, with protocols that really manage against all the different things we would think about, from allergens, cross-contamination, you know, air quality, so on and so forth. And in many of these cases, we are developing protocols that have never been seen before in the world. And in fact, in some markets, even leveraging those protocols to be able to be shared so that legislation can be created. For example, through the World Economic Forum's group called Consumers Beyond Disposability, we will be in Singapore, which is now the delayed Davos, sharing publicly global standards on reusable design, cleaning, as well as even playbooks on how cities can embrace this approach. And so it's not just about how Loop will operate, but sharing all of these best practices so other practitioners in reuse can enjoy them as well, because we're by far not the only player in this, and we want to make sure everyone is moving in this way as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Now, as we go to the next slide, in addition to really good partnerships on the back end, you know, with partners like FedEx and UPS and Ecolab, as you've seen, this is very important that we take the LCA or life cycle analysis of these reusable ecosystems very, very seriously. So I want to share with you, as we go to the next slide, the way to think about reusables. Now, this may look like a complicated slide, so let me sort of slowly explain it. The vertical axis is the environmental impact. So the higher you are on that axis, the worse you are for the environment. Of course, not just looking at climate change, but all the other leading indicators that LCAs measure. On the horizontal axis is the number of times that product is purchased. Now, it doesn't matter who purchased it, but you know, there's an ongoing demand for cups of coffee or hamburgers or shampoo bottles or laundry detergent. So that is the impact. Now, this is looking at a single use. package. Now, a single-use package will have the equal impact every time it is purchased. And so you get a horizontal line. Your third cup of coffee has the same impact as your ninth cup of coffee. Now, what makes the impact higher is if the package is less recyclable, heavier perhaps, and so on. And what makes the package have lower environmental impact is actually the things that Matt and Paul said earlier, is reduction, having less packaging. And as well, what they said is another key pillar is circular, so that it can be recycled, and that lowers impact. This should be pretty sort of standard in the world of packaging. But then as we go to the next slide, what happens when you move to reusables? And you get something interesting. You get a curve. Now, the curve moves up and down due to the same logic, but it's a curve nevertheless. And the reason it's a curve is now that reusable Tim Hortons coffee cup, the physical cup itself does not have to keep being remade. I mean, at some point in time, it will hit an end of life, which we've said at minimum at 10 uses, but in many cases will be many, many more. But it's a curve because you don't have to keep remaking the object. So you divide out the actual cost of making that object over the number of uses, and hence the curve effect. Now, it never will have no impact. The only product that has no impact is the product we don't buy. So the impact at the end becomes the transportation and the cleaning of the cup to allow it to be reset. And here's what becomes very interesting. When does the curve and the line intersect? And there are three scenarios. And I want to preface before showing the scenarios that there is no silver bullet in sustainability, perhaps except not buying things. And that is to say, reuse is not a silver bullet. It's appropriate in some cases, like the examples you've seen, but it's also not appropriate in all cases. And we'll show you what we mean by that. So as we go to the next slide, there are some examples, like, for example, Loblaws' President's Choice products, like that lemonade you saw, that are using the same package effectively in single use as in reusable. The only difference is the single use version, the best option would have been perhaps recycling. And in the reusable version, it's been elevated to now have the best option be reuse, which means that in the first use, it is the equal impact. So if you don't, reuse that reusable container, it will be the same impact as if you just, bought the single use version. But by the second use, the reusable starts getting better. And then it starts getting to an asymptote at around the sixth or seventh use and then maintains there. Again, never gets to be 100% better because you still have transportation and cleaning. Now, what about package forms like what you've seen with Burger King and Tim Hortons that are changing the package form, where the package form is moving away from the original single-use version to a different reusable version? As we go to the next slide, this is an example where you would see doing that. Here, looking at a single-use shampoo bottle, where we're of course evaluating, the fact that that shampoo bottle can be locally recycled and at what percentage it's recycled at, and that it has recycled content to some percentage to make it, versus, let's say, a reusable aluminum bottle. And here, it's going to be different always depending on where you started in single use and where you're going in reusables. Now, in this exact example, through third-party reviewed LCAs, it intersects at the third use, which means something very important. The reusable container, if it's only used once, is worse for the environment. I want to be very clear, right? We do need for reuse to win, other than the first scenario I showed you, and to be better, people have to actually participate in the system. Now, that's not just to say, hey, consumers have to change their behavior. The businesses like Loop, like our partners like Burger King and Tim Hortons and others also need to make sure it's convenient, it's affordable, it's exciting. We have to entice, the use and make it as little a change in behavior. But in this example, again, the reusable is worse in the first and second use. It becomes equal by the third, and then it starts getting better after that, and then maintains better. But let's go to the third example where it never works. And this is important. Again, please, there is no silver bullet in sustainability. We have to think about all options simultaneously. We have to boost recycling rates and recycled content in single-use packages. We have to look at where depackaging things is appropriate. That goes again to the first pillar that you heard Paul and Matt talk about on reduction. We have to think about where compostables are relevant. And of course, where reuse is relevant, and keep innovating and offering all these options simultaneously. Because as you can see here, this is an absurd example, but if you move from a very efficient, let's say flexible package, to a very inefficient reusable package, it may never intersect. And it's so important to be aware, use science-based LCAs to align on where sustainability options are good and where they should be avoided. Now, as we go to the next slide, what we have learned so far is that there are three things that the mass market consumer wants. mass market consumers, all of us, want first convenience. Then we want our products to be filled with features and benefits, taste great, and the experience to be amazing, and so on. And then we want to make sure that that can be achieved with the right value. Now, I'm going to start from the bottom up here and then finish with convenience. Value. The good news here, while we are now launching, for example, with Burger King and Tim Hortons in Toronto, New York, Portland, and Tokyo all this year, which is quite substantial, these are still pilots. And so people may ask, well, can it actually scale? And I'm really excited to say it's not that it can, it already has. Maybe not with Loop, but Canadian Beer is a fully functioning value-based reuse ecosystem, as is the beverage system in Germany. And many other countries already have this running, for example, beverages. And there are other reuse ecosystems that work at scale, whether it's pallets through CHEP or propane tanks or 5-gallon water and many other examples. All we're trying to do is take that learning and expand it to any product that wants to be reusable. Features and benefits, the next one, is actually where I think reuse wins easily. Reuse allows packages to move from being a cost to an asset, and that allows for greater investment in the package. This allows for higher quality materials to be used that can keep our products fresher longer, maybe increase delight, increase quality, increase the general experience. And imagine as a packaging designer how much freedom you would have when you don't have to make that package using just a few cents, but maybe 10 times that or 100 times that in economics. You can really bring out things that were never, ever possible before. But the most important, as we go to the next slide, by far, is convenience. And I want to show you a really telling statistic. We'll be actually launching reusable diapers in Loop later this year, and our wonderful diaper brand shared with us this statistic, which is amazing. Today, right now today, if you look at American, British, French, and German parents, 50 to 85% trial cloth diapers. That's a huge amount of trial. Many people want to try it, but then only 2 to 3% stick. That's a very low amount of repeat. That's bad from a business point of view, but it's also challenging from a sustainability point of view. And further, if you wash your reusable diapers at home, according to LCAs, they're actually not better than disposables. So there's a lot of challenges in the desire, the convenience, and also even the life cycle analysis if we wash at home. And so this is the critical thing that we need to solve is convenience. And it's the way Loop is trying to achieve that is this concept of buy anywhere and return anywhere, where every retailer, whether it's a Tim Hortons or a Burger King or grocery stores, are involved in the ecosystem, and you can buy as a consumer from retailer A and return it to retailer B. But also, by centralizing the cleaning operation and doing that at phenomenal scale, not only do we get unparalleled safety, but we also get much better life cycle analyses. Because if we clean at home, the efficiency of our home dishwashing machine or our hands when we wash ourselves in hand wash is not even close to what sophisticated operations like Ecolabs can bring. And at least this is how we're trying to achieve it with the wonderful partners that you've heard. And just in conclusion, I'll pass it back to Paul and Matt to conclude before we go into any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. That's really good. And I think, the segue of convenience is exactly why I think this is very interesting for us here at Burger King and Tim Hortons, because one of our biggest assets and strengths that we have is convenience, right? If you look at the fact that, where we're located, how our stores are situated as well. So we do have, we think, the footprint to make something like this scalable and work. We are very much in the pilot phase, as we said before, but I think there is an opportunity to kind of scale and grow. But I think the one thing is that we know is that we have to lead to kind of put this together. And it's been a great partnership so far, working with you and the team to kind of figure out a lot of the things that we're discussing today, because to your point, there's so many unknowns in this space, right? It's us working with each other to understand how does a process that was designed that work with CPG, how does that move into like a restaurant space as well? What are the things that we have to adapt and change? How do we have to change our own processes as well? If you imagine, drive-throughs are huge in our business, both in the US and also in Canada as well. So how does a reusable system work in a drive-through? I think the goal is, if we're going to make this work, we have to be as convenient as possible to reduce as much friction as possible for our guests. And will reusables be 100% the solution? Who knows? But probably not. I think so, which also means that we have to work in conjunction with other initiatives that we're doing in packaging to essentially minimize our overall impact as well. So still further, to optimize other single-use products as well. So we know that this will not probably be the silver bullet. To your point, it's not a complete silver bullet in this space, but we have to kind of take this leadership position, which will involve risk. Right, and it's good to have a partner like yourself and the team that has a similar mindset to ours as well. So let me go through some details on kind of what the journey ahead is on the next slide, just so you understand kind of where we are, what's next, kind of what's happening as well. Go one more slide, please. Okay, and then so when you look at our journey ahead, where are we right now? So we're working very closely with the teams to design the best reusables, right? So I think Tom brought up a lot of kind of the requirements and issues that are essentially had to be. We look at is it made from reusable material? How many cycles can we get? What's the cleanability of the asset as well? We're doing all of that right now with our science team, our suppliers and vendors as well. Like I said, this is a very collaborative process to kind of bring this to life as well. We then start to optimize for our restaurant operations. Like I mentioned, we have drive-throughs, we have different store formats that we have to essentially account for. So what happens when a store is located potentially in a mall or some other setup like that? How does this work in those scenarios? So a lot of operational things we have to do as well. Where do you store in back of house? Just to understand kind of from a space constraint standpoint as well. Then it's essentially working on the technology integration with the team with Loop to make sure that is also seamless as well, right? From a guest perspective, it should be as simple as purchase, return my deposits back to me, and how the entire process works, and also tracking, also being able to monitor, how many times a cup has been through the entire system as well. So that way we can start to track, whether something needs to be retired from the system, or to understand how many times the guest has used it as well, to kind of really inform and kind of involve those LCAs that we're going to work on throughout the process. And the last piece is kind of the economics, right? I think one barrier to reuse could be the cost and initial financial component for guests. So we have to understand, okay, what is the best threshold that we can develop using everything that we know to our ability right now to make this program, very value centric for our guests in our stores today. And that may mean that we have to overinvest in the beginning stage of the pilots until we're at scale. We know, through some of our other initiatives that we've done here at RBI, that sometimes you have to make an initial investment to kind of learn opportunities and to see where value is for guests, so we can scale that as well. And throughout the entire process, right? This is just point at the bottom. I think it's very important. It's kind of why we're here today. It's communication. We need to communicate to everyone across the value chain that we work on, kind of what this initiative is, how we expect it to work, why we think it could be beneficial, and also to learn and hear potential pitfalls and roadblocks that could be presented as well. We also need to educate, right? Educate ourselves. We are a heavily franchised business, right? So we also have to educate our owners on kind of what this is and how this works in their stores as well, because we know it's important to the guests, and that's why this final piece here is to work on guest adoption, right? So how do we get guests to adopt to the program? What are the adoption rates? These are key things that we're going to track in our pilots to see, okay, do guests adopt to it? How many guests return it? I know Tom said early in the presentation we see extremely high return rates for guests right now within the Loop system. Does that translate to a more restaurant environment? We will see in the pilots, and that will inform kind of how we scale and grow from there. So this is something that we know is such a almost like a future mindset that we're working now to kind of be prepared for anything that comes up as well. So a lot of work to do, a lot of teams will be involved, a lot of the industry will be involved to help us bring this to life as well. So if you go on the next slide, to kind of just wrap up with how we think about this, is that what is the mission and what is our impact, right? So we believe that we need to take the lead. We are one of the largest restaurant companies in the world. Packaging is a huge topic for us. here, and it's also a huge topic in our sustainability plans as well. So if we're going to be a part of the problem, we have to be part of the solution, and sometimes you have to lead and take risk. And I think you're going to see that not only here in what we do with packaging, with other areas of our restaurant brands for Good Plan as well. We need to transform the way how food and beverage is consumed. In a practical sense, we consume and have used single-use items consistently since the 1950s. This is a behavioral change, right? For our guests in our industry specifically. So we need to kind of work to understand how we can do that in an intelligent way that also leads to adoption, which also leads to overall minimizing our impact on the world. And finally, we're fundamentally changing the model, which is kind of like a summary of kind of both points. Where when this is done, is where we've now brought reusables into a space that generally does not have high adoption or use it at all. And then what does that mean for us over the long term, and how does that work within our full packaging landscape? That will involve better materials better source materials for packaging, our recycling infrastructures. How does it all work together to minimize our overall impact from the packaging that we serve our guests each and every day, without reducing any kind of functionality that we have to make sure that the packagings do what they're just kind of designed to do as well. So it's a really exciting initiative that we have here as well. Looking forward to reporting more on the work that we're doing with the pilots. And I'm going to hand it over to Paul just to kind of wrap this out and to kind of talk about the final next steps as well. So thank you again, everyone, for the opportunity to present our work here.
Great, thanks so much, Matt and Tom. And if we can just flip to the next slide here, with all the work that's going on across all the areas of packaging, it's really such a dynamic and exciting time in our industry. I know that we're super pumped about this, and I hope that everyone listening and tuning into the call today is excited about it as well. While we know that there's tons of unknowns as we plot along the journey here and along the path, there's a couple things that we do know. And so first, we know that we can't do it alone, right? It's a journey. It's going to require a lot of help because we're all guests at the end of the day, and we all interact with all of these different areas of products that we purchase and consume. We know that we need to couple this help and this sort of rallying of all the troops across all the sectors with some really, really creative thinking and an ever constant evolution, right? So we're going to have to learn, adapt, and continue this cycle again and again as we continue to evolve and optimize what we're doing here. And then we need your help, basically, and we need your help more than ever now. And we're excited to be leading the journey together with you. And so with that, we flip to the next, and we just want to say thanks so much for your time today. We appreciate everyone tuning in. A huge thanks and a huge shout out to the PAC team for having us here. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Pleasure to share our story and tell you a little bit more about what we're doing across all things packaging, but also specifically reusables. Thanks so much, guys. And Jim, I think at this point we will pass it back to you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Paul, Tom, and Matthew. What an amazing discussion and such an important venture. This is a classic example of diversity of thought, as individually this could not be achieved. The collaboration among your companies is truly inspirational. Thank you for sharing the challenges, the best practices, and lessons learned. I'm now delighted to share with you and recognize our last group of amazing PAC Global Leadership Awards winners. The legacy of the PAC Awards dates back to 1952. They were created to celebrate the craft of package brand design and innovation. We're delighted to say that our 2021 entries were sold in 41 countries. Our winners can be found in 5 continents and 9 countries, including Australia, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, France, Switzerland, the UK, and the US. We are truly global. 79 packaging experts judged from their homes during the pandemic in 12 countries. We are grateful to these professionals for their dedication and scoring all of the entries. And thank you to the PAC Awards and ONEOF100 Summit Executive Committee, who provides direction and oversight. Our awards feature 2 key categories: brand marketing, which has 8 subcategories, and package innovation with 3 subcategories. And these categories make us unique in packaging competitions. Within each subcategory, best-in-class winners are selected. And then our final 2 Best of Show winners are chosen. 1 in brand marketing and 1 in package innovation. Each winner will be receiving their uniquely crafted award. And this year, to accommodate the rapid growth in international popularity and to highlight the exceptional quality of the entries, a new award level was added. It is called the Award of Distinction. These winners will be receiving a bespoke certificate. Today, we will be celebrating the winners in the package innovation categories and finally, the 2 Best of Show winners. And now for our first category, technical design. And the nominees are and the awards of distinction go to Bacardi, submitted by OI, Hershey's Milk Chocolate Bar from BETC, and To Pizza Pizza by Atlantic Packaging. And the best-in-class winner in this category is, envelope please, Rainforest Artesian Water by Trivium Packaging. Great looks and functional. Good sustainability messaging. Overall, excellent in every way. Well done. Congratulations, Rainforest.
We here at Trivium Packaging are very grateful in accepting an award from the PAC Global Leadership Committee, representing one of our new impact extruded aluminum containers. We are thankful for the opportunity for the Trivium organization to continuously work together as a team to look for new innovative ways to create product differentiation and allow our products to emerge as a strong alternative to plastic while still presenting a premium, versatile, and sustainable presence.
On behalf of the entire commercial team at Trivium Packaging, I would like to thank each and every one of our partners and customers for helping us commercialize this exciting package format.
On this quest, we're very glad and fortunate to have Trivium Packaging as our partner and supplier of this new award-winning bottle, which takes us a step closer into winning the battle against plastic. Because the world needs more kisses and less plastic. Kiss plastic goodbye.
Next, we have the e-commerce category, and the nominees are, and the award of distinction goes to Airwick by Marks. And the best-in-class winner is, envelope please, Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless Foundation by ProAmpac. And a judge's comment said, innovative packaging format that considered little manufacturing disruption, supports the e-commerce distribution chain, lightweight, fragility, and supportive LCA.
Hi, this is Sal Palingra from ProAmpac. Thanks so much to PAC and all the judges. ProAmpac and L'Oreal are honored with this award. We're really excited with this new innovation. This was a great collaborative effort by us and industry partners to bring this to market in a short amount of time, and it's really done so well, and lead users are touting it.
Works. I love the packaging. It's so convenient. It's so thin. Look. It's thin and sleek. You can throw this in your purse, and it's like, I think it's true. You will get every single dot of foundation out of this instead of banging your hand up against the glass. So yeah, this overall worked well. I really like Maybelline. I think they're super affordable and they make such great product. And I'm really happy that they're first in their kind to make a foundation sort of pouch like this, you know?
Just a great example of how this is being received in the marketplace. Again, we're really honored. Thanks so much from Pro Ampac and the L'Oreal team. Happy New Year.
And our last category is sustainable design. This category has truly grown over the years. And this year we saw some exceptional submissions. And the nominees are and the awards of distinction go to Colgate, submitted by Colgate-Palmolive, FlexiHex by FlexiHex, Bud Light by Graphic Packaging International, Sabella by Tricor Braun, and our final sustainable award of distinction goes to Maple Leaf Foods by Davis. And the envelope, please, for the best-in-class winner for the sustainable category is Nabob Maxwell House, Kraft Heinz Canada. This submission demonstrates deep commitment to innovation and to a high level of knowledge of the complete life cycle from design to end of life. Congratulations, Nabob Maxwell House and Kraft Heinz. Great work.
On behalf of the entire team at Maxwell House Canada, I would like to thank PAC for this recognition of Maxwell House 100% compostable pods, which serve as a stamp of the brand's commitment to sustainability, as well as our ongoing mission of solving real pain points in our consumers' lives. We at Kraft Heinz Canada recognize the severe impact of packaging waste and are committed to a more sustainable and circular economy by reducing the use of single-use plastics. This is one small step in the right direction that we're very proud of. So thank you, PAC.
And there was a tie for best in class. And the envelope says, Shell Helix, Net Zero Carbon by JDO. A well-designed packaged product integrated with a globally scaled reuse shopping platform via Loop. Congratulations, JDO.
Okay, amazing. Thank you very much. This isn't the trophy, but it's the reason why we're here. And I'd really just like to thank Shell. You know, they're amazing and for getting us involved in such a fantastic and exciting project. I often say there's no such thing as great design. There's just great clients that facilitate and enable great design and are brave enough and bold enough to get behind something. So joining up with the Loop team and pressing sort of stainless steel and kind of revolutionary approach to packaging, but it's the one pack that replaces the 100. You know, all of us are responsible for probably generating too much landfill, but now's the opportunity for all of us to start doing something and putting things right. So long may it last. Let this be the first of many, and let's see more of this celebrated in the PAC Awards next year. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Well, and now finally, how exciting, our final two Best of Show awards. As previously mentioned, one Best of Show winner is chosen from the overall brand marketing category. The other one from the package innovation category. The envelope, please, drum roll. And the Best of Show for package innovation category goes to Lenore by Procter & Gamble. Hooray! This submission stands out for its demonstrated potential to integrate transformative technology that tackles key challenges in the transition to a more circular economy. It showcases a path forward for automated sorting of recyclable materials at a recyclable center, which could reduce contamination and increase profitability. The holy grail of consumers putting all packaging in a recycling bin and letting someone else sort out the value materials would be nice. Congratulations, Procter & Gamble.
Thank you so much. We are thrilled with the recognition of the Packaging Consortium Global Leadership Awards in the category Sustainable Design, and wished we now could be live with all of you in New York City. We gain inspiration from the many outstanding entries this year, and wanted to thank Packaging Consortium for this forum and the recognition, as well as the expert panel of international judges for their appreciation of Holy Grail 2.0. We hope this support further fuels the success of the Digital Watermarks Initiative Holy Grail 2.0 in building a more sustainable future for packaging materials. We believe digital watermark technology, which can be applied via packaging across different formats, substrates, and geographies, is a powerful tool to help achieve circular economies in a much faster and reliable way.
At P&G, we believe in the power of leading brands to make a positive impact on sustainability. That's why we're excited to be pioneering digital watermarks through the Holy Grail 2.0 initiative, facilitated by AIM, the European Brands Association. We supported the development of the initial project Holy Grail 1.0 under Gian's leadership from the start, and are now playing a vital part in the next iteration of Holy Grail 2.0 to assess viability, enable scale-up and expansion of the capability across more participating brands and retailers. Thank you again for this recognition. We look forward to activating digital watermarking as a catalyst for the circular economy.
And finally, the one we've all been waiting for, the best of show for the brand marketing category. The envelope, please. Congratulations, Hershey's Milk Chocolate Bar by BETC and HP Indigo. A judge's dream entry to review. Fantastic to see an entry leveraging the key brand asset in such a positive way and delivering a message of collaboration and empowerment in such an iconic, bold, and simple way. The name, you can say, was a gift, but the power of creative thinking to unlock this and amplify a bigger idea that creates impact is why design is so important in using it to create a narrative and voice change. I hope the brand campaign is not limited and that the brand does embrace what they have unlocked as untapped potential, not just for the Brazilian market. Well, congratulations, BETC and HP Indigo. Amazing.
Muito obrigado a todos e é uma honra receber esse prêmio.
A gente está muito feliz aí com toda a repercussão que teve a campanha, que as embalagens ficaram lindas e obrigado aí pela escolha. Um abraço.
Oi pessoal, a gente está muito feliz com a notícia, que bom que vocês gostaram e que bom que a gente está conseguindo dar cada vez mais visibilidade para essas artistas incríveis. Muito obrigado.
Hershey tem tudo para sempre dar orgulho pra gente que participou desse projeto. Então, muito obrigado.
Oi pessoal, passando para agradecer vocês por terem escolhido o Hershey. Muito obrigada, a gente está muito feliz.
Muito obrigada.
So we hope to see you in person next year. Stay safe, wear your mask, and remember,